There are a couple of reasons I was drawn to Isle Mountain, which is a game that comes out this week on PC. And its main selling point to me was that you don't just control Charles, the main human character, but you also control his puppy. And the idea is that you go off on a journey across a mountain to find your puppy medicine so that you can cure it of a certain disease or at least postpone some of its illness. So immediately I was like, this is going to pull at the heartstrings, isn't it? Well, sadly, it doesn't. And that's because it falls down on quite a lot of its initial intent, and I feel like it's been slightly missold because it's primarily a walking simulator with puppy-based puzzle elements that drop in and out, but the way how you get to these are quite clunky and clumsy and doesn't lend itself well to a great experience. So I'll try and explain what I mean. As Charles, you wander through various different environments, and very walking simulator, you can walk, you can run, you can pick up various objects to give you kind of tidbits of side story, because it's not just going and saving your puppy that's a thing. Charles also has a bit of a tragic past, and that starts to manifest itself in weird, is it real or is it supernatural things occurring as you continue through the mountain. But you've also got like a bit of a subplot that's going on in that the mountain that you're crossing through is become infamous and has actually been cordoned off by police because loads of people keep going missing in there. And so it's all like, oh, what's going on with the supernatural stuff? And the opening cutscene really sets this out quite nicely. However, once you then reach a kind of dead end point in each area, you need to switch to the puppy. And this kind of puppy mechanic, which was the main selling point for me, is the bit where it all falls apart. So, in order to control the puppy, you have to make it happy. And you can do this by feeding it apples as you wander around different environments, which are very finicky to pick up. And I found this just in general with the interaction tool. The meter then goes up when you feed it the apple, but there's never enough apples to kind of take control of the puppy a couple of times. So you have to just stand there and keep petting it. And then there's like a really long gap between when you can re-pet it again, because you can't like spam... You can't spam pet your pup, basically. Try saying that after 3 drinks. Anyway, as you kind of wander through all of this, eventually you'll be able to take control of the pup. Great. But the controls of the pup are broken, particularly if you're playing on controller. It's better on keyboard, but I still had problems with it. Each character, both Charles and the puppy, can walk and run. But with the puppy, if you start to run, it gets confused and then it goes back to walking. And then it doesn't know what it's doing, so it just stops. And then it starts spinning around in circles if you're trying to move and it doesn't move forward. So you have to keep on like spamming the run button in the hope that it will trigger something and then the puppy will move forward a little bit. But only for a few seconds and then it will stop again. And I found this repeatedly and repeatedly over and over again. It seems to have a longer time before it starts to happen when you're playing on keyboard only. But then I also found that some of the keyboard controls aren't fully mapped across to the controller. For instance, you can only bark as the dog with a left click of the mouse. You can't replicate that on a controller, which just feels a bit odd. So the other thing with the puppy is that all of its puzzles are around trying to find something so that you can like trigger it or pull it usually. And when you go into puppy mode, you've only got 60 seconds to understand what you're doing. And so anything that's pullable, you can press a button and it turns orange, so you can kind of work out what it is that you need to do. But because you spend half of that minute wrestling with the controls, you then run out and then you go automatically back to Charles and you're thinking, bugger, I've run out of apples. I'm just going to have to stand here for 2.5, 3 minutes and pet the bloody thing. So then you're petting the dog so that you can then get back in control of it, to then wrestle with the controls even more, and then have an argument about what it is that you're supposed to and not supposed to be doing. A lot of the what turns orange in the puppy makes no sense whatsoever and doesn't really help you understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And so I found some areas where I was just wandering around going, this feels like a game that's trying to be open and accessible for so many people by not putting text or explanators or anything like that in its path and trying to visually colour code like, hey, all of this is something that you can do, but then takes away that really clear like visual guide towards it. If you're going to do that style of gameplay design, it has to be so clear that people are going to go, okay, that's what I need to do. And it just naturally, the cadence of everything that you're doing pushes you in that direction. And I don't feel like our mountain does that very well. I don't feel like I should be stuck 15, 20 minutes into the game going, I've touched everything that's orange, I've looked around, my characters have no other tools, and I'm just standing here petting things for ages and I don't get what I'm doing. So yeah, it felt like a real problem for me trying to get through this game and experience. I think there's some good ideas here. I do like the use of like multiple storylines all happening at once, and you can kind of go back and forth, particularly as puppy vision seems to bring up memories of the past. You kind of get fragments of what's gone on in previous runs through a mountain from other characters' perspectives. And I like the idea of like the mind starting to play tricks on you and like what is real and what is reality and all of that stuff. It just needs to be held together in a much more cohesive gaming experience, so that you can be invested and not have the game wrestle you to a stop every 3 or 4 minutes, so that you can actually like enjoy the experience. As it says, intended to be done in a single sitting. I couldn't get through it in a single sitting because it was broken so often. So that's that. Written review will be over on highplanegames.com. Interesting attempt, didn't quite execute, but I'm sure that there's some good talent there so that they can continue working on games and improve for the future. Take care. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.